Hey, it's Chris. What are you talking about today? Plaid Hat sent me Freelancers, Crossroads game, sequel, expansion baby to sort of a combination of Forgotten Waters and Dead of Winter. Interested? You should be. Let's talk. So in case you're not familiar with this style of game, Dead of Winter, Forgotten Waters, take this Crossroads system where essentially you're having events, you're having random things occur, and you're going to have to mitigate them in a storybook scenario-driven sense. And so this game plays off of those, and it builds upon the shoulders in a slightly different way than both of its predecessors as well. Pros is that it's better than Forgotten Waters. Cons is that with the unpredictable nature of this, there's going to be a lot of things that are just completely out of your control at all times, including a die-heavy driven skill and combat check-based system. The other thing that you have to know is it's heavily app-driven, and that right there is going to be the most divisive point. When you've got a system here, as you can see in front of me, I have a map that you're going to be drawing through, going from location to location, doing events, having certain things happen a la the Crossroads portion of things, and then on the right side here, districts in this scenario-driven spiral-bound notebook where you are choosing one of the various places to go in the planning phase that's going to dictate what part of the app you're going to be utilizing, which is going to correspond to the other events on this side of the board. Do that enough, do that in the right order, then maybe you progress to the end of the round where you either get experience, achieve the objective you were searching for, or move on to the next area in the book in the first place. This actually comes with about 5 different maps. If you scroll through here without doing too many spoilers, you can see that they're all highly variable. They all give you various routes that you can head or traverse, and none of them is the same in any shape or form. They also give you an extensive area to keep track of on the back, which is not only going to keep your influence, your wounds, but also how many other tokens or followers you may be doing. That'll give you save opportunities so that you don't have to worry about being able to finish it every single time you're going through. Now, on the left side of things here, you can see I've got 4 different boards and dials set up that can be used a la the Forgotten Waters system, where you can assign players their sort of role or job to make everybody feel all equally involved. The biggest thing with this game that you have to know is just going in expectation-wise. This is not going to be the deepest. This is not going to be the most strategic. This is not going to be the most replayable game in the first place. But if you like a scenario-driven narrative style of things with a little bit of D20 mitigation chucking to go along with it, yeah, it works well. You've got the enemies dialing up here. You've got your medics, so if you take too much damage, you lose. If you take too much threat down here with this one, you lose. Or if you have the most or the least amount of influence as you move these trackers up and down with your asymmetric, slightly, characters, you get to choose the turn order on this side of things as well as a few other aspects. Example of one of your characters, in this case, is going to be a race and a class, and you just put them next to each other, you choose a name, you write down the titles that you gain as you go across, you gain experience, you get to flip this thing over and mark off some special abilities that it gives you at special levels, a little bit of a narrative asymmetric there as well, and then you also get to cross off a bunch of this stuff at the bottom as you gain rewards. And I didn't mention it, but of those characters, of those races that you can choose from, any combination thereof, right? You have huge stack that of asymmetric combinations. Now, they're not the most different, but you're gonna have a different setup each time of the lower right-hand corner here of these bonus stats, as well as the camp actions here in the bottom middle that you can see where you're slotting your followers under. Each of these are gonna be slightly different and slightly different combinations of them in the first place. And you can see the trinkets down here is the main one. And that goes with all of these little colored D's that I've got going on, right? Actually, we've got yellow here as well. And you can see that you're going to be utilizing these to basically not only roll your skill checks, but also mitigate them. Because as you gain these items down here, the further you go across, if you have one that matches, you actually get to add it to the D20 to allow your mitigation to get even better. So in this case, if I roll my D20 and I get an 11, well, if I've got the purple one to allow me to mitigate it, now I've rolled a 21. And so then this die rolling becomes a lot more fun when you can actually, succeed more often than not, right? That's not to say that you're actually going to succeed every single time. In fact, you're going to fail a lot because this game doesn't give you as much guidance as you may want. It's a lot of randomness. I mean, that's what a Crossroads thing is. If you remember Dead of Winter at all, right, you just pull the card up and you say, this is what's going to happen to you. And again, it goes back to what I said about expectations. Do you have the proper expectations for a open narrative, chaotically random game like this in the first place? And if you go into it knowing that, this game is a whole hell of a lot of fun. But if you go into it going, I'm going to try and min-max this, I'm going to try to succeed every single time that I go throughout this, well, you're going to be in for a rough time and probably a bad time, in honesty. And as we talked about, you're going to have a lot of variability in terms of the action economy that you're going to be picking over here. You may get an agility check. There are 3 ranges there. You're going to gain a treasure, gain a luck, gain supplies, gain sense, gain one of these things if you can, roll correctly down here. Panhandle, again, depending on what you roll, given the scenario, you may go and enter a certain number in the app versus another number. Or utilizing one of these, 1,000 tokens that you have as well to keep track of things like corruption and luck and sense, because corruption doesn't allow you to use these little bonus dice that I just mentioned in the first place. So how are you going to mitigate it? That's what you need to be aware of. Now, it gets rid of some of the things that were, sort of critiqued in Forgotten Waters in the first place. There's not such random repetitiveness grinding in the scenarios where you're doing this event again, doing this again. You also can't steal from each other. In a cooperative game, doesn't make sense. It's like Marvel Legendary where, the points actually matter. Nobody likes that. It's a little bit like Dead of Winter in the sense that, if you're like me, you just play without the hidden traitor for the majority of the time because everyone has a good time then at the end of the game. And that's what we're going for here in the first place, right? Going back to these tokens, though, for just a minute, you're going to be having to draw them on a round-by-round basis in order to mitigate and go further on that map. And so you're going to be tempted, because this book is freaking big, and you're going to have lots of areas that you can, kind of go through and search and find, and you have 5 different maps that you're going to be traversing through this whole book. But if you try and do it all, you're inevitably going to run out of time to get to Fairy Ridge, and you know what? You're going to lose because there's just too much to explore in one run through. Now, the downside is that once you kind of play through all of these areas, once you play through all of these maps, this probably isn't going to be a game that you're going to go back to as much in terms of replayability in the first place, a la maybe something like the first Dead of Winter. If you have that much randomness, that's going to give you a completely different experience every time, because let's be very frank and foremost here as the bottom line of these games. Crossroads in general, they're an experience-based game, a game that you go, hey, do you remember when this happened? Hey, do you remember when this happened? Do you remember when this occurred and we rolled this, or that scenario occurred in that way? That's what this is playing on, and that's why this is better than both of its predecessors in that particular aspect. Absurd scenarios, humorous situations, and a lot of just inconsequential decisions that are going to go along the way. And so if that sounds like a lot of fun to you, just with a little bit of, crazy chaoticness, that's what this game is best at. It takes the RPG Dungeons and Dragons spin style of things, does it tongue-in-cheek, and does it really well, if that is what you're looking for. This is not a game to be taken super seriously. This is a game to just have a lot of romping, good time fun with. It is immature, it's campy, it's silly, it doesn't have high replayability in terms of once you finish it all, you're going to want to necessarily go back to it extensively. But you know what? For what it is, it does an excellent job of it in the first place. If you have a lighter style, just low overhead dice chucking game. And so from those aspects, I can't really fault it. You've got a huge treasure pile of things that you're going to be sorting through and just randomly drawing there. You've got a huge pile of story-driven elements, including items, weapons, and followers that you're going to be managing. You've got a whole different thing of followers that you're going to be using to mitigate the circumstances and the, fun along the way. You've got your followers here, plenty of variety that you're going to slowly collect and use to mitigate, and you have up to 2 at a time that'll just knock each other out. Then you've got all your various treasure cards, again, all along the way. Anything from items and safeguards to actual jewelry that you can wear along with it. And you're going to be actually fighting, so the weapons are actually important in terms of being able to deal damage to your opponent. Well, the game itself. And then you also have a heavy deck of story-driven elements that are all going to be numbered in the lower right-hand corner that you're going to be slowly piecing through, and it's going to tell you to select when, depending on what you get. So all in all, like I said, if you're looking for something super serious, if you're looking for something that is going to be more replayable, go get Dead of Winter in the first place as a Crossroads event. If you want more of the thematic incorporation of the high seas, yeah, Forgotten Water is okay. But this one is going to be, if you liked Forgotten Water and you want more of a fantasy trope, this is going to be much better from a mechanistic standpoint, and it's going to be much better overall from a gameplay standpoint. But the problem with it is not that it's less grindy, but it's less replayable. And you're going to have about 5 big scenario-driven aspects that you're going to play through, and then again, if you're like the legacy game folks, what are you going to do with it afterwards? Well, trade it to somebody else, I guess. So that's what you need to know. Freelancers, Plaid Hat Games. Check it out if you're interested. As always, stay classy, have a great freaking day.